Discovery's 4 computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
cut above the rest by Alan Wardroper. The pepper was cut into slices. I then put it on a skewer and suspended it horizontally between two glass with a white card as background. I removed the skewer in Photoshop. A Rose by Any Other Name by Daniel Wood. An English Rose by John Smith. Apples by Gary Wood. My wife had the idea, having visited her mother the other day, where she noted a red bowl full of apples. So yesterday I had a late night trip to the supermarket to purchase required items, then spent an hour or so in the kitchen trying to perfect the lighting, but whilst trying to keep the focus distance to a minimum. Blocked Caller by John Denny. I was researching the family history in a churchyard, and the telephone box stood out vividly against the surrounding stonework and countryside. It reminded me of a TARDIS, so I took some photos thinking the subject might come in useful one day. Concentration by Wendy Cook. Taken on a visit to Emma Bridgewater factory in Stoke last year. Crocus Maya Lucifer by Roger Leck. Cumbria at Shackerstone, Loswaterson. Hunslet Austerity 060 Hank, Cumbria, seen at Shackerstone Station on the battlefield line. Early Morning at Uluru, Loswaterson, also known as Ayers Rock, is a large sandstone rock formation in the southern part of the Northern Territories in Australia. Fire Buckets by Paul Steens. French Tomatoes by John Denny. The tomatoes were taken on holiday in a local shop. I thought they looked great against the colour of the tray. The textures were brilliant too. Heavy Load by Martin Hall. Only been crop taken on my iPhone. Hoverfly by Chantal Cooper. The hoverfly is on a lucifer. Just saw it feeding on the lucifer in my garden and took the shot. My aim was to get the hoverfly against a soft red background to make it stand out. Keyboard by Daniel Wood. My laptop is a gaming laptop which gives emphasis to the W, A, S and D keys when it is lit up red because these are used for general games play. I realised that the R and E keys were close by, so just rearranged the keys. Well, actually, to tell the truth, I did this in Photoshop rather than actually physically move the key. Lady in Red by Peter Lawrence. After chatting to this charming lady, I asked if I could take her picture as the sun was shining through her parasol and there were so many red textures. Liquid Red by Alan Wardroper. This is the same image that I used in cut above of the pepper. It is run through the liquefy in Photoshop with me trying to bring out my artistic side. Loose on Bleeding Heart by Steve Pears. Taken last week at Wadston Manor, this is run by the National Trust but retains the aviary from the days of the Rothschilds. The aviary has a variety of species of unusual birds, many brightly coloured. The Loosened Bleeding Heart was the only one that met the red criteria and was clearly visible. The image was taken on my Canon M6 Mark II with an 18-150 lens at 125mm. Night Eye by Steve Bexon. I zoomed out my lens during a 3-second night exposure of the London Eye, and I liked the resulting effect. I then processed it in Lightroom. Piglet by Julie Holbeschmond. The image of Piglet was taken on my kitchen hob. I shed Piglet's feet so they looked like he was kicking the ball. The ball was placed on a small piece of wood. The image is comprised of 4 images layered together and masked where necessary. The lighting was a number of small flashes at low power. The image was processed in Lightrooms and Photoshop. Poppyfield by Andy Freeman. For the last couple of years, I've volunteered at the National Arboretum to plant the poppies sent in by members of the British Legion ahead of Remembrance Day. This image was taken in November 2018 of one of these sections on a Nikon D3100 with an 18-105 zoom, slight crop and a little bit of sharpening via Snapseed. Poppy in My Garden by Margaret Waterson. I took this photo after it had rained. The flower head was bent over by the wet and I noticed how photogenic it looked. The Photoshop, I cropped the image first and enhanced the colour a bit, took the highlights down and then gave it an oil painting effect to finish. Poppy by Chantal Cooper. For the poppy I wanted a mass of red poppies in the background, but without seeing the individual flowers, except the one I had focused on. This was achieved by getting down low and using a small aperture to get a shallow depth of field. It turned out just as I wanted it. Red Arrows by Ian Waite. These were shot at Shackleton in 2013. I don't know how they stumped up the £30,000 to pay for it, but it was a full 25-minute display. It was shot on a Sony A77V at 70mm, 1/25,000th of a second, f7.1 ISO 200. I used continuous shooting, but only used 4 frames. Image is mostly unaltered apart from some cropping and slight enhancement of the planes to lighten and increase the saturation as they were in shadow. Red Art by Ian Waite. This was shot on a Camera Club outing to Oadby Botanic Gardens in July 2011, when they do an annual Sculptures in the Park display. It was shot at 38mm, 1/13th of a second, f5.4 ISO 400. Very little processing, although I flipped it vertically to move the focal point. Red Bikes by John Langham. Firstly, an apology. The image as originally shown on the website had a sizing issue, which meant it was quite soft. Bikes were lined up for sale in Elizabeth Street in the City Business District of Melbourne Station in February. Red Bubble by Peter Lawrence. This 1957 Messerschmitt KR200 appears to be smiling at you. This is accentuated by the use of a 14mm lens to exaggerate the bulbous contours. Red, Red and Red by Alan Cook. Red Roses by Julie Holbesch-Mond. The roses were taken on my dressing table. The curtains were drawn with a small split to allow natural light to fall on the top of the roses. The image was processed in Lightrooms and Photoshop. Robin at Brandon by Wendy Cook. Was taken on a walk around the Botandon marshes with a Nikon D3300. Robin Redbreast by Martin Hall. It was just cropped and enhanced. Scarlet Ibis by Alan Cook. My images, I'm afraid, are archive shots, as I haven't done much in the last 3 months. The Scarlet Ibis I found as having just had a new PC built. I was sorting out some old stuff. It was taken on the negative, but I used to process myself and was scanned, and that was the result. Taken on a Minolta X300 with a 140mm lens outside the old Colonial building at or near Nairobi. Singing Robin by Margaret Waterson. This was taken at Hidcote Manor Gardens in springtime. I took this with a Canon 5D with a 24-105mm lens, taking a few one after the other, and I caught it with its beak fully open. Then in Photoshop I cropped it first and then added a bit of vibrance to boost the red a little. Spanish Flag by Andy Freeman. This is the Spanish aerobatic team, the Patrulla Aguila, taken in the International Air Tattoo at the RF Fairford in 2018. Part of the display includes painting the Spanish flag in the sky. The image has had a square crop and a slight colour boost, taken on a 300mm lens on a Nikon D3100. Station Precinct by John Langham. I waited for ages for someone to walk past wearing red. The precinct is of the Southern Cross Railway Station in Melbourne. The Duchess by Gary Wood. Shows LMS Princess Coronation Class 462 46233 Duchess of Sutherland passing flooded fields near Frisbee on the Reek, heading a mainline rail tour. in October 2019. The Red Chair by John Smith. Tower of London Poppies by Paul Steens. Waiting for a Call by Steve Beckson. It was well worth the wait for somebody to stand and pose for a photograph at the end of 5 red telephone boxes. The red coat was a further bonus, taken near Covent Garden. Processed in Lightroom, colour effects bleach bypass to enhance the wet paving and reflections. Where Light Falls by Steve Pearce. Taken on the 15th of November 2019 at Coventry Cathedral to commemorate the Coventry Blitz. There was a continuous changing illumination on the remains of the old cathedral. I captured different images, including this one when it was illuminated in red. Taken on a Canon 5D Mark IV with a 16 35mm lens at 35mm f4 for 0.3 of a second.